Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. My name is John Campea, and this is an Ask Me Anything. What is an Ask John Anything? Well, it's kind of just like open mic, except you guys are free to ask me about any of the stuff that you want to talk about. Like normally on open mics, we focus our conversations on things like TV show, movies, and all that kind of stuff, the things we normally do around here. But on Ask Me Anything, you guys can open it up a little bit. If you guys want to talk about gear, tech issues, YouTubing, technology, all that kind of stuff, I'm here to talk with you about it as well. Now, for those of you who are watching live, and by the way, hello to everybody who is watching live. To those of you who are watching live, we ended up starting about 25 minutes late. Let me explain why. We are right now, as we speak, doing an interview with the mega producer Jerry Bruckheimer for our Designing Hollywood show. That is, of course, executive produced and run and created by Martika Barra and legendary iconic Hollywood designer Marilyn Vance. And they were having tech issues and things like that going on. And I was trying to get ready to do this show while running back and forth trying to fix tech issues. But everything is now fixed. As we speak, right outside that door is the main studio. And they're talking to Bruckheimer right now. So that's all fixed. We're running a bit late, but we are here nonetheless, and I'm glad you guys were patient enough to hang around and wait with me. So yeah, good to have you guys here. Thanks a lot for joining me. Hello to everybody who's in the live chat, Matt, Pawson, Kevin, Indian, Mayak, Raul, D, everybody who's here. Welcome to be, we're glad to have you here. And I'm going to let you guys know that you can get in a comment or question for the show by using the super chat feature if you're watching live, but they are almost full. So I'm going to be shutting off the super chats in just a couple of minutes. But for now, you got a few minutes to get them in there if you'd like. So let's not waste any more time and get right to it here, shall we? We're going to get things started off here with Danny Sanchez, who writes, why is it so hard to judge the show on its own merit, other than complain that it's not what the game did? This show is the best television out there right now. Well, I'm going to assume you're talking about Last of Us. And the thing about, here's the thing, we talked about this on the main show the other day. When people have it's the same thing as people like saying the book's better than the movie, right? When people have their first experience with a story one way, then that kind of becomes the template in our heads, right? And we've all done this. It becomes the template in our heads about what this show, what this movie, whatever this is should be. And when it doesn't follow exactly, then people recoil a little bit, right? Like they get their back up and they recoil. Hell, even even Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, like everybody says, oh, masterpiece, but you got to remember going back to when the Lord of the Rings came out, there were a lot of Tolkien purists that really bitched and complained about Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings because it had certain differences from the books. Actually a lot of very noticeable and notable differences, like huge differences. Like some people today would complain about Ring of Power. It's like, it's not staying true to the theoretical appendices. Well, back when Peter Jackson put his movie out, there were a lot of people really complaining very loudly. I remember it but that's what we do, right? So you're right. I'm always of the mind that you judge something by its own merits and, but people who read the book first or watch the original movie first or play the game first, it's kind of a natural reaction to kind of recoil a bit when it doesn't follow what it is already headcanon for you. You know what I'm saying? So you got to cut people a little bit of slack. I mean, I agree. Judge something on its own merits. But for the people that are complaining a bit, cut them a little bit of slack and see if they still feel the same way, say 6 months from now. I find people normally warm up to something once you give them a little bit of time to do so. All right. We keep things going now. Where are we at now? We are at Jaron Morris, who writes, thoughts on UFC 284 and how you think John Jones does. I have no idea how John Jones will do. We've never seen him fight a heavyweight. So I'm not really sure how he's going to do. I mean, he had some throwaway fights and everything. Plus he's been off for so long. This is a guy who just keeps getting himself in trouble. I really don't know. I have no idea how he's going to do. I'm going to be interested to see how he comes out, though, because ring rust is a real thing. Make no mistake about it, it is. All right, the Rice Rat writes, as of 6 p.m. Eastern, seeing Winnie the Pooh in an hour, Pooh, Blood, and Honey. I know Taylor Gonzalez, our own Taylor, is very, very excited about going to go see that. I will admit I'm actually very curious to see it myself. I hope you have a good time with it, Rice Rat. All right, next up. Hero75 writes, one of two. My friend joked that Disney should do a Predator and Avatar crossover movie. They will never do it, but the Predator hunting humans and Na'vi in the jungles of Pandora would be interesting to me. Part 2. Is there any crossovers you wish could happen, but no, will never happen, even in a joking way, like my friend's idea of Predator on Pandora? I actually think a Predator on Pandora would get killed pretty fast. The Na'vi are big and fast and strong, and they are master hunters, and I honestly don't think a Predator would last very long on Na'vi. Now, I'm not saying if you put one Predator and one Na'vi in a cage and told them to go at it, I'm not necessarily saying that the Na'vi would win, but one or two Predators on Pandora trying to go against 4 or 5 or 6 Na'vi, again, I don't like the Predator's chances in that fight very much. Now, as far as crossovers, I'm not really much of a crossover guy, but the one I've always talked about, going back years and years and years, is Terminator and Matrix. Because if you really think about it, I remember the first time I saw The Matrix, when it got to the end of that movie, I remember thinking, this feels like a perfect lead-in to Terminator. The machines take over. Like, it almost feels like The Matrix is something that happens after the events of Terminator, right? The machines have been waging war on humanity. Then eventually they just figure out to capture humanity, turn them into batteries, and then The Matrix comes out. So really, Terminator and The Matrix would make a perfect crossover if you think about it. All right. Let's see here. Next up, we've got Moda Awesome, who writes, can you see Kevin Feige being the CEO of Marvel at some point in the future? He is the CCO and has input in recent comic storylines and video games. To be honest with you, I'm not even sure. Like, here's the thing. He is the head guy of Marvel Studios. Okay. He is the head guy of Marvel Studios. Let me look something up here. Of Marvel Studios. Now, Kevin Feige is the CEO of Marvel Studios. So there's that. Now, I think you're talking about whether or not he can do something with Marvel comic books and stuff like that. No, and he shouldn't. He's not a comic book guy. He's a movie guy. And remember, I think, like, if we go over and look right now, Kevin Feige is listed as the president of Marvel Studios. Here's the thing. I don't think there is a CEO of Marvel Studios. I could be wrong about that. I don't believe Marvel Studios has a CEO. Now, remember, Marvel Studios is no longer, it's not like DC that's under James Gunn. Marvel Studios is not in the same organization with like Marvel Comics and Marvel. Like, Marvel Studios, it's its own kind of spin-off division, right? And under the Disney Motion Picture Group, I don't think any of the studios have a CEO. Like, Kathleen Kennedy is not the CEO of Lucasfilm, right? She's the president of Lucasfilm. I don't believe the individual studios have a CEO. I think if Kevin does have a CCO title, I don't think there is a CEO of Marvel Studios. Now, then there's Marvel Entertainment, which is a separate thing, but Marvel Entertainment doesn't have anything to do with Marvel Studios. So yeah, that's what's going on with that. Okay. Let's see. Next up, we go to, that was Moda Awesome. We did the Hero 75. Now we're at Prady Iger, who writes, after watching the Flash trailer, I now understand why Warner Brothers hired Andy Muschietti to direct their Attack on Titan live action adaptation. His direction style perfectly fits a story like Attack on Titan. I'm a big fan of Andy Muschietti, but I would say this, don't get too excited about Andy Muschietti and think you understand his directing style based on a trailer. Okay? Because that's all we saw was 2 minutes of random, very carefully selected clips and shots and put together by a trailer organization. Remember, Andy Muschietti didn't make the trailer. So don't get too far ahead of yourself about Andy Muschietti's directing style based on the trailer. You really can't tell a director's directing style from a trailer. But listen, Andy Muschietti, a lot of us got excited when they announced that he was going to be directing The Flash for a reason. He's a really gifted director. I am very excited about this movie. I've heard that Andy Muschietti's done a terrific job with it, made it one of the best comic book films of all time, according to James Gunn. And we'll see if that actually works out that way. Anyway, thanks for writing that in, Brady. All right, next up. CJ Rebirth writes, looking forward to Sunday, John. Hopefully I can meet you tomorrow too, and that your AMC app has the tickets this time, like what happened with Avatar 2. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, the first time I was supposed to watch Avatar 2, I had bought tickets, and where's my phone? Yeah, and I had it on my AMC app, my tickets, right? And then on my way to the theater, I opened up my app, and my tickets were gone. My tickets were just gone. I had them. Oh, I had them. All of a sudden, the app had no recollection of me having owned those tickets. So I had to wait a few days to go see it again. But I did double check my AMC app earlier today to make sure that my Flash tickets or my Ant-Man tickets were still in there. And they are still there. So I'll be watching it tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to Sunday too. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right. Next up, we got Eddie Vedder's Stage Dive Anyway, I know all film is subjective, but it's irritating to see that Denzel Washington's movies John Q holds a 25% Rotten Tomatoes score. That movie is incredible to me. Listen, I've got a little bit of a soft spot for that movie because a part of it, about half of that movie was shot in my hometown of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Maybe even more of it was shot in my hometown, the Hammer, Hamilton, Ontario, greatest city in the world. Listen, the premise of the movie is fantastic. I didn't think the movie was great, but the premise is fantastic. For those of you who don't know, go check it out. But I'll tell you what, look, I live in the United States, all right? I love living in the United States. I am very proudly Canadian, but my job brought me down here, and I love living down here. I met my wife here, love living in the U.S. I do. That being said, John Q is one of those movies that really makes everybody else on the planet who doesn't live in the United States go, what kind of backward clown health system does the United States of America have? Where you literally, one of the only few countries in the world where you literally could not get an operation to save your life or the life of your child because you don't have enough money. I will never, ever, ever understand why Republicans or Democrats or anybody have not fixed this. I'm sorry, just from somebody from the rest of the world, we're like, this is some backwards shit. And I love this country. I love America. It's great. So great in so many different ways. But yeah, man, as a member of the global community, the rest of the world looks at US as like, you guys really let the capitalists screw you, don't you? Like the fact that healthcare is a for-profit industry is really fucking backwards. And I say this as somebody who lives here and loves this country. And this isn't a political thing because I haven't seen Democrats fix it. I haven't seen Republicans fix it. All I know is y'all are really backwards thinking when it comes to your healthcare, man. Very, very, very backwards thinking. Anyway, okay. Next up, that was Eddie Vedder. Next up, we got Luke1234 who writes, R.I.P. Raquel Welch, still a stunning beauty. Yeah, we heard about that during the show today. I still haven't had an opportunity to even read up what happened or what the circumstances were. I'm definitely sure we're going to talk about it on the John Campea Show tomorrow, but that was really surprising and stunning to hear. James Argento writes, do you think no Alan Horn is hurting the MCU? Also, 2 weeks until Mandalorian Season 3. Maybe. No Alan Horn, because remember, Alan Horn he's Kevin Feige's boss, right? He's Kathleen Kennedy's boss. He was Pixar's boss. He was Disney Animation's boss. He was Disney Motion Pictures boss. Alan Horn was the head honcho over there. Could him no longer being there, and he hasn't been there for a while now, but could him not being there be having a negative effect on what's going on there? Probably. I don't know how much, but I definitely know that if Alan Horn had actually continued to be in charge of the motion picture group when Bob Chapek was there, I think some things definitely would have been done a lot differently. But Bob Chapek came in, messed everything up, and Alan Horn said, ciao, I'm retiring again, only to come out of retirement again to go over and work with Warner Brothers. Then they brought in James Gunn, and now Warner Brothers is positioned a lot better than Disney is right now, in certain ways, at any rate. But yeah, it probably is having an effect. Probably having an effect. All right, next up. Al Renshaw writes, thoughts on the new Little Mermaid teaser. Could this be the lead up to a new full trailer coming shortly? The movie looks great. I got to tell you, we're going to talk about it on the John Campea Show tomorrow, but I watched the new Little Mermaid teaser after the John Campea Show was done today. Taylor brought it up and we all kind of gathered around and watched it. It looks really good. And I'm not a Little Mermaid guy. Don't get me, like, all these people say, oh yeah, Little Mermaid is one of the greatest. You know what? I'm not a big Little Mermaid guy. Not a big Little Mermaid guy at all. But I'll tell you what, it looks really good. And that little Ursula shot at the end, that was, again, I am not a Little Mermaid guy, but oh my God, that looked really, and yes, I do think it's building up to us getting a full trailer here pretty soon. All right. Al Renshaw writes, I love hearing Feige saying he's scaling back the MCU content on Disney Plus and finally admitting he is stretched thin. Think this is a result of Iger. Yes. Yeah, Iger, it's definitely 100,000%. We even heard Iger make reference to this before about, hey, we're getting ahead of ourselves a bit, need to scale back a little bit. That is definitely a part of Iger's playbook. And so, yes. Plus, Kevin Feige, remember, under the Bob Chapek regime, Kevin Feige didn't really have control over Marvel. What they made, when they made it, where it would end up, that was all dictated to him by Bob Iger's banker buddies and this leadership structure they put in place where somebody else was making the decision about what content to get made and where it's going to go. Under Bob Iger, that is all going back to Kevin Feige, and probably under Iger's directive, kind of saying, now we need to scale it back a bit. Marvel has been putting out too much content. I've been saying that for a while. It's simply too much. Marvel was able to have a level of excellence because everything was under the quality control of Kevin Feige as they're moving along. But as they kept expanding more and more and more and more and more, like now we got 4 shows coming out in a year and 4 movies coming out in a year and all this kind of stuff, like he couldn't do it. I still remember talking to Kevin back when they were putting out like 3 things in a year, and he was running himself ragged. Like he was absolutely running himself ragged at the time. And it's just too much, and their quality has suffered. I don't care. You guys know I'm a big fan of the MCU, but it doesn't matter. Call it what it is. Their quality has suffered over the past couple of years. It really has. The level of consistent excellence that they have always had through phases 1, 2, and 3 is simply not the level of excellence anymore. It's been, I'm not saying it's down here, but it's dropped. And I think a lot of that has to do with them overextending themselves, Kevin Feige not being able to have direct quality control over everything, and just doing things for the sake of the bankers who want more stuff to put on Disney Plus. I really do think having Iger back in here is part of the reason why you're seeing Kevin Feige saying we're going to be able to start scaling back a bit. All right. Next up, Al Wrench also writes, I need to see Ned become Hobgoblin would be so dope. You know what? I've heard a bunch of people say that. I don't think that would be a good story turn at all. We've seen too many things where the best friend becomes a villain. I wouldn't be down for it. I love Ned the way he is. That's just me personally. All right. Brad Burke writes, hey, John, I know you're a fan of the UFC. Yes, I am. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on McGregor fighting Michael Chandler. Thanks. McGregor is going to get his ass kicked. Chandler, ever since he's come into the UFC, has fought nothing but the top alpha dogs every single fight. Every fight Chandler's had has been against top alpha dogs. And even in the fights he has lost, again, his title fight and stuff like that, he puts his opponents on their asses. He knocks them down, and he puts on high octane, exciting, fun fights to watch. And McGregor has lost 3 of his last 4. It might have been 4 of his last 5, but I'll go with 3 of his last 4. Although it might be 4 out of his last 5. Anyway, McGregor has been out for so long. I don't think McGregor's really been the same since Habib Nurmagomedov schooled him. So I think Chandler wins that fight. I think he knocks McGregor out. But I think it's going to be a fun fight. I mean, listen, think of what you want about McGregor, and I have certain thoughts on McGregor, but he's an entertaining dude to watch fight. Like he is an entertaining fighter. I will always give him that. He's a very entertaining fighter. I think him and Michael are going to put on an entertaining fight, but Michael wins by knockout. I feel very, very little doubt about that. Let's see here. Next up, we got Eddie Vedder's Stage Dive writes, I've been seeing the Star Wars YouTube channel has been releasing videos of nothing but lo-fi Star Wars theme ambient music for people to relax / study to, and I'm here for it. That is a big trend on YouTube right now of either ambient lo-fi music. I've actually been composing some of my own lo-fi music. I really have. I've been doing little lo-fi jams just for fun. I've got, I've got my own little music studio at home, but creating lo-fi jams and basically YouTube channels creating ambient videos, ambient like lo-fi music, ambient like rain sounds on a car roof or beach sounds. These videos make stupid amounts of money because they make these videos and there's now there's an explosion of them, particularly the music ones, but even just the ambient sounds, right? Like sound of a Pacific Northwest forest at night with the sound of wind going through trees and crickets chirping and an owl in the background somewhere. Like, cause people put those on and hit play and they just let them play all night and fall asleep to them, whatever. And it accumulates crazy amounts of revenue. So yeah, you're going to see, you've probably noticed and recognized a whole ton of these lo-fi channels, because there was always the lo-fi girl, her channel, but then like hundreds of others have popped up as a result of it, and these ambient things. It's a big sub industry now on YouTube. It works. It works for them. I have no problem with it. All right. Jay Bling writes, something about Jason Statham in Fast 10 that I find kind of neat is that it reunites him with Louis Leterrier, who made Statham an action star with his first 2 Transporter movies. It's funny. Rob and I were talking about that off camera because, there's a little bit of a surprise element to him being in there, considering his attachment to Hobbs and Shaw. And clearly there's never going to be a Hobbs and Shaw 2 at this point. But then we remembered that, there was the Transporter films. And I wonder because there was never any word about Jason Statham being in Fast 10. I wonder if Louis Leterrier coming on the movie is kind of what got Jason Statham. Now, I don't think Jason Statham is going to play a big major role in the film. I think he's probably going to have a few scenes, but I think that probably has something. I personally think, and I have no proof of this is just me speculating, but I think there is a direct correlation between Louis Leterrier coming on as the director and then Jason Statham coming on. I bet if Louis Leterrier never took over as director, I bet you Jason Statham wasn't originally supposed to be in the movie. Again, that's just me speculating. I'm not saying that's a cold, hard fact. That's just my guess on that. All right. Next up, we got Danny Sanchez, who writes, my excitement for the MCU content is at an all-time low. I mean, I'll be honest, so is mine, but me saying my excitement for MCU content is at an all-time low is still pretty damn high. It's just that my excitement for MCU content has always been like way up here, like way at the clouds. And now it's a little bit more normal, right? I'm excited. Like I'm excited to see Ant-Man tomorrow, although I'm not loving the reviews I'm hearing, but still I'm excited to see Ant-Man tomorrow. I'm excited for Secret Invasion. I'm excited for everything that they do, but my excitement level isn't as high as it used to be. And that's a direct effect of, again, that Marvel standard of excellence that we've seen for over a decade is no longer what it used to be. So hopefully we're going to be able to correct that moving forward. All right. Next up, David Ullman writes, well, Deadline just reported that Tom Holland will return for the MCU. We talked about that a little bit earlier today. Not surprising. Also, Kevin Feige revealed that there will be fewer MCU shows in the future, hopefully not just the usual 6 episodes. Yeah, that is one thing I really want to see them change. I don't mind once in a while having a limited series, a mini series, if you will. I don't mind that. But this nonsense of 6 episode seasons is just stupid. Look, if you want to make a movie, make a movie. Okay? If you want to just go make a movie. And do it properly. This 6 episodes, and then what's really sucks is like they're like 6 or 7 episodes, and they're like 38 minutes an episode, right? It's just, I really hope they change it. Again, it probably had something to do with the Bob Chapek penny counting bankers trying to maximize profits, which again, every studio tries to maximize profits. I'm not saying they shouldn't. It's still a business. They're trying to make money. I understand that and I respect that. But when you directly are compromising the quality of your content, which I think they have been by doing these ridiculous 6-episode things, like 38 minutes at 6 episodes, it's frustrating. It's really, really frustrating. All right. So I am in agreement with you, David. Totally in agreement with you. All right. Next up, we've got Joseph Michael, who writes, do you think Pixar and Walt Disney Animation Studios will still continue to make original animated features along with these new sequels sequels in the future? Of course they are. Listen, where does a sequel come from? An original film. Disney and Pixar and Disney as a whole, they always want to make sequels. But in order to have sequels, you have to put out new originals to create new successful franchises that you can continue to make sequels with, right? Because it's great that they're doing Zootopia 2, but there is no Zootopia 2 without Zootopia. There is no Frozen 3 without Frozen. As a matter of fact, they've got a big animated original film coming out, Elemental. Elemental's coming out. And the fact that studios love their sequels so much only doubles down the need for them to continue to making originals, because sequels come from originals. I know that sounds silly to say, but I think we need to remind ourselves of that every once in a while. Sequels come from originals. You want to have more sequels to make in the future? You got to come up with more new franchises, and do that, you got to create new originals. And it's paying off for them. It's paying off. And I think this Elemental looks great. Elemental looks great. So we'll see how that all goes. All right. Thanks for that, Joseph. Josh C. writes, have you ever seen or heard of Australian rules football? We had to play it a little bit in high school, as a matter of fact, in Canadian high school. If so, what are your thoughts? I'm not going to lie to you. I totally don't understand the game. It's like cricket. I can look at cricket. I can see, man, there's a lot of skill going on in here, but I have no idea what's going on. And we played a little bit of cricket in Canadian high school too, and I never understood it. That's not me. I'm saying I just didn't understand. I do not understand the rules of Aussie rules football at all. Those are big, tough, burly guys, man, playing that game, but I have no idea what they're trying to do. So I always wish I knew what was going on, but I never did. All right. Let's see. Next up, we've got Mike's Movie Madness, who writes, Ben Whishaw said in a recent interview that movement on Paddington 3 has stopped. Think they are just waiting for Paul King's schedule to clean up? No. And by the way, Ben Whishaw, he just does the voice of Paddington. He does probably 2 or 3 weeks at most, probably closer to 2 or 3 days of work on the movie. Quite frankly, he wouldn't even really know what is or isn't going on behind the scenes of the movie. Again, that's just the truth. I mean, you can talk to Chris Carr about that. Chris Carr, who is a animation voiceover coach, will tell you that, like, you never really know. You get called in, you go in, you do your stuff. He's not very involved in the projects, so he wouldn't even know. But even if it was at a standstill right now, I have no doubt that it is coming, but I'm pretty sure Paul King said he wouldn't be he'll produce, but he's not going to direct part 3. So I don't think they're waiting around for Paul King's schedule to pick up. Maybe they're going through some rewrites or something like that, but I'm sure work on it is still moving forward. All right. Next up, we've got Matthew Lawrence, who writes, podcast listener. Thank you, Matthew, for listening to our podcast. Is it all possible for you to stream the audio live, not YouTube, where we could listen to the show live and text with? No. Listen, you can always, here's the thing. If you want to listen to the show live, just turn on the YouTube app these days. I think you don't even have to have the video on. You can have your screen off and still listen to it. So my best recommendation is just to turn on the YouTube app and listen live. And then if you want to text in with the live chat and everything, then you can still do that right from the YouTube thing. You don't have to be watching the video. You can just be listening to the audio. So that would be my recommendation with that. All right. Thank you. All right. Next up. Matthew Lawrence also writes, part 2, comments and questions similar to how radio stations do it now. No. No, we are a YouTube show. That's what we are. We're not an audio show. We put up an audio podcast for those, who can't watch a video, and it make it easier for them to listen to the show. But we're not going to have two separate chat boards going on, like one chat board over here with our YouTube viewers, and then another chat board over here with people listening to audio, and then a third chat board for people who are listening on Spotify, and then another chat board for people who are watching on Instagram Live. Nah, it's just not worth the hassle for that. So again, I would propose that the best option is just to turn on the YouTube app and just listen to the audio. And that way, if you want to engage and write in with everybody else, that would seem to be the best way to do it. But anyway, that's just me. All right. But thank you for being a listener to our podcast, Matthew. I appreciate that, man. All right. Next up. Eddie Vedder writes in again, says, at the end of the day, do you think Clint Eastwood's legacy will be more towards his acting or his directing? Both have been fantastic. Yeah, listen, I'll tell you right now, Clint Eastwood's one of the great directors of all time. I'm not going to say top 3, 4, or 5, but top 10, top 15, Clint Eastwood is in that discussion of one of the greatest directors of all time. He's absolutely legend. But I really believe 30 years from now, when people talk about Clint Eastwood, I think his directing, even though he's an Oscar-winning director, I think his directing will be a also was. You know what I mean? Like iconic movie star, also was a director. I might be wrong about that. We're going to have to wait a couple of decades to find out for sure. But you got to remember, literally generations of people, by the time he did Unforgiven and everything, he had been an actor, a big major movie star for a couple of generations of movie fans. And it is even though for many of us it's been decades, it's been a relatively recent thing for Clint Eastwood in terms of his career and life. So I think at the end of the day, he will primarily be known as the iconic movie star, even though I believe he is one of the great directors of all time. But again, we'll wait and see. We'll have to wait and see a couple of decades. Only time will tell what he will be primarily remembered as. It's a great question, Eddie. All right. Next up, Michael Jones writes, the audience rating for Super Bowl commercials are out. The top trailer was Indiana Jones. It was 17th overall. Surprisingly, Air was second highest trailer, 18th overall, and Flash third highest, 37th overall, then Guardians at 40th. I do not know what you mean, Michael. By the way, Michael super chatted in $20. Thank you, Michael, for supporting us on that level, man. I don't know what you mean by the ratings for Super Bowl commercials are out. I don't know what you mean by that. Do you mean like quality ratings? Do you mean how many people watch them ratings? I really don't know what you mean, because if you're talking about television, like how many watch it during the broadcast? Well, that has nothing to do with the trailer, because people never knew when the trailers were coming on. It was all about where they happened to people watch. I mean, I need some more specifics on that, Michael, unfortunately, because I'm not really quite sure what you're referring to. But anyway, thanks for writing in, man. And thank you again, Michael, for supporting us on that level. That's incredibly generous of you, man. All right. Next up, Justice Sub 32 writes, with Amazon creating the live action adaptation of God of War, let's hope they could take notes from what made The Last of Us a success. Here's the thing. What? Last of Us is a totally different thing. I'll tell you what makes Last of Us a success. Great writing. Great writing makes Last of Us a success. There is nothing else that any show can take notes from The Last of Us. The key for The Last of Us is not that they made so many changes from the game. The key is not that they kept so many things from the game. It's all just great writing. All that matters is great writing. And then getting in directors who know how to take that story and execute it and stuff like that. It's just great writing. So the key for Ragnarok is not put infected in God of War. Make sure no. There's already some similarities, right, between God of War and Last of Us. Actually, you have your grizzled older warrior character in Kratos and Joel. Then you have the younger child character that they're trying to look after, whether it's Loki or Ellie. But there's no notes to take except great writing. write great dialogue, write compelling characters, make changes. Don't feel beholden to the source material. Make changes, but only make changes, like Druckmann said, when it improves the story. And don't keep things the same from the game, except for where keeping things the same from the game improves the show. But it's just all great writing, man. And I listen, I am not going to go into I keep wanting to say Thor Ragnarok because, of course, the God of War sequel was Ragnarok, but I'm not going to go into God of War expecting it to be as good as The Last of Us. I don't need it to be as good as The Last of Us. That's like going into any crime movie and saying, well, is it as good as The Godfather? Well, obviously it's not going to be as good as The Godfather, but I just want a great show. If it's as good as Last of Us, great. If it's 85% as good as The Last of Us, awesome. That'll still be an awesome show. I'm just going to go into it, make your own show, but just have great writing, great characters, great dialogue. Just do the best you can to make it, and don't feel beholden to the game. Don't feel beholden to the game. Take as many liberties as you need to if you think it improves the story. That ultimately, that's the one transferable lesson I think there is from The Last of Us to God of War. Don't be automatically beholden to the game. Be willing to make changes if you think that heightens the story. And if they can do that, they'll be fine. Maybe. Who knows? We'll see. All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, just a sub. All right. Eddie writes in again. Let's see. I really hate that we have to wait so long for second seasons of Andor, Rings of Power, and House of the Dragon. Me too, man. Do you think Last of Us will suffer the same fate? Yes. I do not expect a Last of Us season 2 next year. I honestly, I don't know why. Listen, it's not even all the way back in the day. It's just a few years ago. Like, great shows were putting out like 18, 22, 24 episode seasons and putting them out faithfully every single year. Today, you got like 8 episode seasons and we can't even keep up. We can't do more than one a year. I'm just sorry. There's no excuse for it. I understand that a lot of shows today will have heightened post-production work. I get that. I do. But if other shows before, some of the all-time greatest shows in history, could put out 22 episode seasons and have the next one out next year, you can if you plan right. You can if you plan right. But yeah, I do not expect us to have a lot. I mean, I don't know. Help me out in the live chat, guys. Has there been any announcement that they're even shooting Last of Us Season 2? I don't think they've started shooting Last of Us Season 2. So, I mean, I don't expect to have a Last of Us Season 2 next year. Do not expect to have it next year. I think at the earliest we can expect to have a Last of Us Season 2 is 2025. And again, that sucks. There's no reason for it. Anyway, there's all that. All right, next up. Chef Rigo writes, I want to start buying movie posters for my home. Any places or sites you recommend buying from? Thanks, John. You know what? No, I don't. I literally, when I'm looking for some movie posters, I literally just start a Google search, and like everybody else, I'll start probably on Amazon, see if I can find the one I'm looking for on Amazon. If not, I'll just go on Google, search around, and then I'll order from wherever seems to have it. There isn't for me. I don't know if any of you guys have any like go-to movie poster places. If you do, go ahead and fire in the name in the live chat. But yeah, I don't have like, say, a singular go-to movie poster vendor that I use. I literally just go online and I search for whoever's got that one I'm looking for. The version of the poster that's got this in the corner or whatever. And I'll just see whoever just has it. And then I'll just buy it from them. The other tricky thing is knowing the dimensions you want, because there's a bunch of different places will put out their posters in various sizes. You can get 42 by 20. Anyway, make sure you know your dimensions, make sure you know your size, and then I just run for it. But if anybody does find a really reliable poster vendor, go ahead and leave a comment in the comments section, because I would personally like to know that too. And it would help out our friend Chef Rigo. All right. Next up, Big Mouth Stan sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Big Mouth Stan. Appreciate that, dude. Writes, I saw a YouTuber break down historical inaccuracies of Lawrence of Arabia. It got me thinking, why do a lot of films based on historical events have so many inaccuracies? Do filmmakers not have access to historians? This is a big issue for me, Big Mouth Stan, but not the way you think. I have always, and people hate it when I say this, but I don't care. It's an inconvenient truth, but it's a truth. The number one job of filmmakers is not to be as historically accurate as possible. You're not making a documentary, unless you are making a documentary. That's totally different. But yeah, the number one job of a filmmaker is not to be as historically accurate as possible. That ain't your job. Your job is to make the best movie possible. And these things are based on real events. That means you should take creative liberties to tell a better story. This isn't a classroom. Like if it was a classroom and you're writing a textbook, that's one thing. If you're making a documentary, that's one thing. But if you're telling a story, then tell your story. Be inspired by the true events. That's another phrase, you'll hear instead of based on true events. Now you hear the phrase inspired by true events, right? Take Inglourious Bastards. That's incredibly historically inaccurate. Very, very historically inaccurate. But you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way because it was awesome the way they did it. And I am intelligent enough to know that that's not history. I'm not getting a history lesson. Do you hit some, like I would like to see them hit some of the major notes. Like this was a very key event. This was a very key event. And that third one is another very key event. We got to make sure that we hit those three. But then the rest of it, take liberties, tell the better story. Like, hey, wait, that conversation between these characters never happened in a coffee shop. Well, who cares? It made for a better movie. And we as audiences understand that we are watching a movie. We're not watching a history lesson. We're not watching a documentary. We're not watching a news report. We are watching entertainment. And so to this day, every movie that comes out that is inspired by true events, hopefully they communicate the spirit of the true events. They get the main parts of the true events, all that kind of stuff. But other than that, tell a compelling movie. That's the number one job. So anyway, again, I know that's not a popular take, but that has always been my take on it. And I'm glad that's the way it is. Actually, Warlocks in the live chat just pointed out Braveheart. Braveheart's one of the greatest movies ever made. A lot of historical inaccuracies. A lot of historical accuracies, yes, but a lot of historical inaccuracies in that one as well. And you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. All right. Let's see here. Next up, that was Big Mouth Stan. Thank you again, Big Mouth, for supporting us on that level, man. Al Renshaw writes, thoughts on Barney's new look? I haven't even seen it. Don't really care. I'm just being honest with you. I don't care. I heard that there was a new look, but I don't care. John Redcorn writes, have you seen Dana White's Power Slap show? It's dumb. I can't even listen. I got a lot of respect for Dana White. I really do. I love the UFC, but that is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. So no other thoughts other than that. Jai CSC writes, which is your go-to Las Vegas hotel to stay at? My number one first, like when I'm going to Vegas, like Anne's going to Vegas this weekend. I'm not actually going with her this weekend, but Anne and her sister are going to Vegas this weekend. My number one spot that I always go to first and see if they got rooms available, whatever, is Caesars. And I'll let you in a little secret. I shouldn't tell you this, but I'm going to tell you this. So about 7 years ago, 8 years ago, I got contacted. Ann and I like going to Vegas, and we would go a few times a year. And about 7 or 8 years ago, I got contacted by somebody, one of our viewers, one of our fans. And I shouldn't be telling you this, but I will. And they said, hey, John, I've heard you say a couple times about you and your wife, Ann, going to Vegas. And I just want to let you know, I am a Caesars Entertainment VIP rep. And the next time you come into Vegas, just let me know. Maybe I can get you some discount on some show tickets, or just let me know the next time you're coming. I'll see if I can set you up with something. I'm like, cool. That sounds great. So, the next time, a couple months later, Ann and I were going to go on another trip. So I thought, I remember there's this guy who reached out to me. He was a Caesars VIP rep. I'll get a hold of him. I'm going to tell you right now. For the last 7 or 8 years, I've not paid for a room in Las Vegas. Caesars Entertainment has just taken care of me. And whenever we go to Vegas, they set us up at free rooms. And the free rooms have normally been in Vegas or at Caesars. Sometimes it would be at another Caesars hotel, whether it's Planet Hollywood. I also really, really like Planet Hollywood. I really enjoy Planet Hollywood. But yeah, so for the last bunch of years, I have never paid for hotels. Now I still have to pay for all my other stuff, but he's also gotten us free tickets to shows that have been at Caesars hotels and stuff like that. But that's why sometimes when I've done videos from Vegas, you'll hear me go, I really want to thank the good folks at Caesar who've been taking care of us and blah, blah, blah. That's part of that. So now, unfortunately for me, about 6 months ago, that friend of mine, he's now a friend of mine, that VIP rep finally, after like 7 or 8 years, left Caesars Entertainment. He no longer works there. So my VIP rep is no longer there. So my last couple of trips, my last 2 trips to Vegas, I've actually had to pay for my own hotel room. But I've been very, very lucky that the last number of years I've been able to go to Vegas every like 2 or 3 months. And because, we just live about 3.5 hour drive from it. We hop in the car, drive up to Vegas, spend the weekend there. They've comped our rooms and it's been great. So, but yes, my number one hotel that I like to go to is Caesars Hotel. Is the actual Caesars Palace. My second favorite after that is Planet Hollywood. So those are the 2 I like to go to. All right. Listen, guys, we are going to take just a quick break here, if you don't mind. I'm going to go refill my drink. I'm going to rest my voice for just a moment. And while we do so, we're going to take a second and hear from one of the sponsors of our video today, the great folks doing great work over at BetterHelp. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, BetterHelp. When you're at your best, you can do great things, but sometimes life gets you bogged down and you may feel overwhelmed or like you're not showing up in the way that you know you can. Working with a therapist can help you get closer to the best version of you, because when you're feeling at your best, the challenges that life throws at you don't disappear, but you're more prepared to take on those challenges. Guys, I've been saying for a long time that we need to start prioritizing our mental health as much as we do our physical health. When we dedicate ourselves to going to the gym and looking after ourselves, we see that as a great step forward for us physically. Well, it's time for us to start taking care of ourselves mentally as well. So if you're feeling it's time to give therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, flexible, affordable, and entirely online. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. So if you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/Campea today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Campea. And thank you to our friends at BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode of Open Mic and John's Ask Me Anything. All right. With that down, guys, let's keep going here. Actually, give me 1 second. I'm just going to reset the questions here for a moment, and then we will get right back to it. Let me see if I can remember where we left off here. That was just, we had Big Mouth Stan, Red Corn. There we go. We're now all cut up. Okay. We go over to Culture Wars Diplomacy, who writes, any book adaptations that you loved both the movie and the book, but are almost unrecognizable as one another? I mean, like one of my favorite adaptations was Shogun by James Clavell, that the FX is now doing is redoing it and remaking that. Hobbit. No, you know what? No, I can't think of a single one. Guys in the live chat, can you guys think of one? Well, some people saying Game of Thrones. That's not true at all. Game of Thrones is very recognizable as being the same Game of Thrones from the books. There's a few detail differences, sure, but it's very, very recognizable. Well, Civil War, somebody in the live chat is saying Civil War. Civil War is not a book, right? So that doesn't really count. I never read Ready Player One. DJ Stevie's saying Ready Player One. I never read Ready Player One. Twitter Sucks is always saying The Shining. Again, I never read The Shining, so I wouldn't know, but that's interesting to know. All right. Oh, M. Joseph is saying Jaws. Oh, I got one. I heard Jurassic Park. I never did read Crichton's Jurassic Park novel, but I've heard some people who have read Jurassic Park say that the movie is actually very, very, very different. But again, for me and my experience, I can't think of any off the top of my head, to be honest. All right. Thanks a lot for that, Culture Wars. Next up, John Redcorn writes, how much does Ant-Man need to be profitable? Well, Let's see. It's costing just short of $300 million to make, if the reports are true. Let me look this up quickly. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, production budget. I think it was close to like $300 million. Well, now I'm reading some people saying $200 million. Okay, well, that's not as bad. Okay, so let's say it's about, let's say it's close to 300 million. I just saw a report that said 200 million. Okay, let's go with 200 million. Okay. So if it's 200 million, they're probably going on the heavy end of marketing on this. So let's say 150 million. Let's say they did 150 million worth of marketing. So now you're talking 350 million. So you need to make an amount of money, because remember, the movie theaters are going to keep 1/3, right? So let's say 500 million minus 33%. It's probably about 600 million. If the production budget is around 200 million, then you're probably talking around 600 million. If the production budget is 300 million with 150 million, and remember, we're making a guess here on the marketing budget, but I think they went pretty big on the marketing budget. So we'll say 150. So yeah, if it costs 200 million to make with 150 million, they're probably going to need to make close to 600 million to break even. These reports going around that the movie's going to need to make $1 billion to break even. I don't know what the fuck those people are smoking. Don't listen to them. If it costs like 300 million to make, which I thought I heard whispers that Ant-Man 3 may have cost close to $300 million to make, then they're probably going to need to get in the $700 million range, closer to that, just to be safe, to say that they're profitable. But I'd say if they make $600 million, they're probably profitable at that point. If it is indeed $200 million production budget, $150 million marketing budget, with the 1/3 that the studios need, that the theaters are going to keep, 600 would be a nice safe number. 600 would be a nice safe number. So we'll see. All right. Let's see. Next up, we've got, where are we at? There we are. We're at John Redcorn. No, that was John Redcorn. Eddie Vetter writes again, one thing I'm surprised we didn't get at the Super Bowl was another trailer or TV spot for Secret Invasion. Still waiting for that official release date. You know what? I was just talking to a friend of mine on the phone this afternoon, and I just said to him, I'm kind of surprised we didn't get a Secret Invasion release date. Like a 30-second spot. Like, I'm not terribly surprised they didn't buy a $7 million 30-second commercial spot at the Super Bowl, but I thought at least during the Super Bowl they would release that information. I really thought during Super Bowl we would get a release date, and we didn't yet. But I expect we're going to get that soon. I expect we'll get that soon. All right. Let's see. Next up, Big Mouth Stan writes, at the end of Fast 9, a blue Nissan appears. Seen speculation online. Seen speculation that they want to have a CGI Paul Walker in one of the Fast films. Is this true? I doubt it. I mean, what they might do, I've heard some thoughts and some people guess that what they could do is bring one of Paul Walker's brothers back and, do a little digital enhancement on his face to say it's Paul Walker. I mean, to me, it's all about what does the family want? Family. Now, and I don't mean family as in Fast and the Furious sense. I mean Paul Walker's family. If Paul Walker's family would really like to have one of the brothers be in there and have it carry on Paul's character, then I'm all for it. Why? I don't know why anybody would have a problem with it if the family was all for it. Now, I have no problem with it if they don't want to do it, but I just don't know. I just don't know. I think the possibility for a big pop in the theater might be too much for them to pass up. And I think from everything I've read, I think it sounds like the family is very all for it. So I don't know. I think we will see the character, Paul Walker's character, and I can't even remember what the character's name was at this point. But I'm going to guess we will see the character as being portrayed by one of his brothers and have a little bit of digital making up to do to make him look more and more like Paul. Again, that's just me guessing. That's just me speculating. That's not me breaking any news here. All right. Let's see. We've got John Redcorn. who writes, Puss in Boots has made more money than Black Adam and will cross 400 million. If you would have told me that a year ago, I would have said you're crazy. Oh, I'm 100% right there with you. Listen, the Black Adam situation is going to be one that we're going to look at and talk about. I mean, it is just inconceivable. It is absolutely, in my best Vincini, inconceivable. It is absolutely inconceivable what happened with Black Adam. The biggest movie star in the world, starring in a big DC property. Granted, I get it. Nobody knows who Black Adam is. I understand that. That's why I was never expecting Black Adam to be a $2 billion movie or anything. But come on. Nobody saw 300 something million. Nobody saw that coming. Nobody did. It's not about Puss in Boots making 400 million. I could see that happening. It's an animated family film. I could see 400 million happening. Wouldn't be shocked by that. But a Dwayne Johnson led DC movie making under 400 million? That's a hard one to swallow, man. That we're going to be talking about that one for years, I think. People are going to be dissecting and doing an autopsy on Black Adam for years. What really went wrong? We all know there's a bunch of the issues, right? But I think there are going to be discussions and people doing autopsies on that project for a long, long, long time, including Dwayne Johnson himself. I think he's going to be doing an autopsy on it for a long time, too. Hosea CXI writes, hello, sir. What did you think of UFC 284? I did not watch it. Ann and I went camping. I took my wife, Ann, on her first ever camping trip. Now, the plan was for us to watch camping because this campground had Wi-Fi poles with signal boosters put throughout their campgrounds. So the plan was we were going to cuddle up and watch the UFC on the laptop. Unfortunately, whoever their internet service provider is, ESPN would not let us log in to our account through their internet service provider. We also couldn't log into our Netflix. And we couldn't log into our Disney Plus. We could log into Hulu. I don't know how we were able to log into Hulu, but we were able to log into Hulu. If you think so, we ended up not being able to watch it. It sucked because I heard it's like one of the greatest fights of all time. Yeah, so there's that. I hope they run it back again, though. I really do. All right. Next up, Big Mouth Stan writes, have you ever seen the movie As Above, So Below? It sounds familiar. I don't remember it off the top of my head, to be honest with you, Big Mouth Stan. I might have seen it, but I can't remember it off the top of my head, unfortunately. Corey M. writes, who knows if this is going to happen, but I would love for Spider-Man 4 to have Spider-Man team up with Daredevil to face off against Kingpin. Yeah, I don't see them doing that. Daredevil to Disney is a TV character, apparently. I don't think we're going to see Daredevil on the big screen. At least not sharing side by side with Spider-Man. I don't think they see that as equal billing at all. I don't think they see putting Daredevil in a Spider-Man movie helping Spider-Man at all. Like here's the way Disney will think, and they're right. Let's say you took a Spider-Man movie. Okay. Now let's theoretically say we have another Spider-Man movie, but Daredevil is in that one. Is that one with Daredevil going to make a lot more at the box office than the one with just Spider-Man? I don't think so. I really don't. And I really think if you really think about it, you don't think so either. Now, so it would be all right for Daredevil. That would give the Daredevil character a big pop, but I don't think they're going to do it. And I'm totally okay with it. I'd much rather see something else they'll never do. I would much rather see Deadpool as Spider-Man. That's what I would love to see. And that would be helpful to Spider-Man and to Deadpool. I don't think they're going to do that one either, but I would love to see Spider-Man and Deadpool on screen together. I think that would be hilarious. All right. Thanks a lot for that, Corey. Next up, we got BioD writes, when you eventually retire, will you miss talking about movies? Yes. I often think how when fighters retire, how hard it must be to move on to retired life. Oh yeah, I know. No. I'm totally prepared for that. I know I'm going to desperately miss it. And just to be clear, I'm not retiring anytime imminently, like no time this year am I retiring. But I'm starting to lay the groundwork, and I'm starting to make plans for me retiring, because I want to retire when I'm still young enough to do all the stuff I want to do. And fortunately, I've been very lucky and very fortunate, and I've managed my career very well, that I am going to be able to retire quite early. And I want to take advantage of that. I want to spend, time with my family. I want to travel. Ann and I have all these big plans about wanting to work with nonprofits and charitable organizations and all these things we want to do that we just don't have time to do right now. And I'm really excited about the idea of retiring. But I do know, for sure that I will desperately miss talking about. Every time a new big piece of movie news will come out, I'll be like, oh God, I miss doing my show. I know I'll totally be like that. And I don't know, maybe someday, like when I do retire, maybe I'll still do like a big weekly podcast. Like, all right, because that's not remotely as time consuming, right? So maybe I'll do like maybe I'll still do a podcast or something. But we'll see. We'll see. But yes, I will desperately miss it. Every time any piece of movie news comes out, I will desperately miss being able to jump on YouTube and talk about it with our community. All right. Next up, John D writes, saw The Death of Superman Lives. What a doc. John Schnepp's great documentary, The Death of Superman Lives. If you have not seen it, follow John D's example and check it out. It's fantastic. I'm glad you saw it, John. All right. Eddie Vedder writes again. When do you think we will hear more about that Quentin Tarantino show he's making? That is super intriguing to me. I would not doubt it if it died. Now, I'm not saying it has. I've not heard that it's died. But having heard nothing, I wouldn't be surprised if that thing is off the table now. Again, I'm not saying it is. I am not saying it is. I'm just saying, I haven't heard anything for a while. I don't know. Where's this 10th movie, by the way? So, I mean, look, I think we're going to find out about Quentin Tarantino's next steps, whether it's the TV show, whether it's a movie, whatever. I think we will find out about Quentin Tarantino's next step this year. I don't know if it'll be in the next 3 months or next 6 months, but I think this year we will find out what he's truly doing next, whether that is the TV show he was talking about or whether that's his 10th film. All right. Next up, UIV writes, announced Bucky is leader of the Thunderbolts. That would make sense to me. I mean, he's the guy with the most experience. He's the guy who's actually a soldier. I guess it kind of makes sense to me. I mean, I'd have to go back and look at it myself. I haven't seen the report myself, but that would make sense. All right. Next up, Yang Rodriguez writes, it's awesome how Bob Iger goes to the premieres. Yeah, listen, every premiere I would go to, and I've been to a lot of them, that was a Disney one, Bob Iger would always be there. I mean, I remember this one time he wasn't because there was something really, really big going on and he couldn't be there, but Bob Iger was always there. So not to get his picture taken. Bob Iger was always there to show support for his filmmakers, his talent, his creatives. He was always there to show his support, which makes him right there a radically different CEO than Bob Chapek was, who most of the time didn't show up. Sometimes he did, and we'd float in and he would float out. But yeah, that's one of the things that makes Iger so different. All right, Jeffrey Hemphill sends in like a $50 super chat. Jeffrey, thank you so much, man, for supporting us on that level. Appreciate that, man. Jeffrey writes, it seems odd that none of the top grossing movies in the last 38 years can break Raiders of the Lost Ark record of movie with the most legs. I don't know what you mean by that. Not Avatar 1 or 2 or Avengers Endgame and Infinity War or Star Wars The Force Awakens. What do you mean? I got to ask Jeffrey, what do you mean by most legs? Because what's your definition of most legs? Because let me look this up. Hold on a second. But Raiders, Indiana Jones does not hold any kind of record for the most. If you're talking about most weeks at number one, it definitely doesn't hold any sort of the records for most weeks at number one. So I'm not quite sure what you mean. Yeah. So let me bring this up here. So here's the record list for most weekends at number one. E.T. This record will never be broken, by the way. E.T. 16 weeks at number one, Titanic 15 weeks, Beverly Hills Cops and Tootsie back in the early 80s with 14 weeks, Home Alone with 12, Back to the Future with 11, Ghostbusters with 10, Good Morning Vietnam number 9, as well as Crocodile Dundee, then Avatar: The Way of Water and Fatal Attraction with 8. On Golden Pond with 7. Porky's. Oh, there's a movie going back to my childhood. Porky's had 7 weeks at number 1. Spider-Man went. Yeah. So I'm not quite sure what you mean by legs. Not really sure what you mean by that. Look, regardless, here's the thing. One of the reasons why I said movies like, what was number 1 up there? E.T., right? One of the reasons why I said that that's a record that's never going to be broken. Okay. I'll tell you why that record will never be broken. And even Titanic at 15, that's never going to happen again either. Beverly Hills Cops at 14, Home Alone at 12, Back to the Future at 11, Ghost. But I don't even know that we will ever have one that gets 10 weeks. The reason being is, well, there's a couple of factors, but it's all about era, right? Even 97, which is now 26 years ago, but the movie industry is far different today than what it was for 2 reasons. There's the audience behavior side, and then there's the industry behavior side. Starting with the industry, back in like 1982 or even 26 years ago when Titanic came out, not nearly the sheer amount of movies came out back then that do now. Take the pandemic out of it for a minute, okay? Just follow me here. Just take the pandemic out of it for a second. But the sheer number of, the amount of competition, the number of movies that get released, like back in like 82, 83 to 45, you did not have weekends with 5 major wide release films coming out. It is not uncommon, again, just overlook the pandemic for a moment. But there were many, many, many weekends where you get like 4 or 5 brand new wide release films coming out on a weekend, right? That never used to happen. Never used to happen 30 years ago, let alone 40 years ago or whatever, right? So that by itself, that means in the span of about just 4 weeks, your movie will probably face anywhere between 12 and 15 other brand new films that came out after your film came out, just in the first 4 weeks. So that makes it very, very different right there. The other difference is audience behavior. See, back in the 80s, a new movie would come out. Yeah, maybe in 3 or 4 weeks, you'll go see it, right? Audience behavior has changed. We talked about this on the show a while ago. Remember, Variety put out that report, and it showed that more and more, as every year passes, a growing percentage of the audience, if they're going to go see a movie, they go see it within the first 10 days. And a big amount of them go on opening weekend. But this huge percentage of them will go in the first 10 days. Now, every once in a while, you get a movie like Spider-Man No Way Home, like a Top Gun Maverick, or an Avatar The Way of Water, that will have incredible legs and keep going. But these are the exceptions. Like even Avatar The Way of Water, which, you know, is one of the all-time, now the number three or number 4 all-time biggest film, but it's not like 8 weeks at number 1. It's still like 8 weeks away from, it's never going to do it. Because more and more of the audience are going earlier and earlier in a movie's release. Back in the 80s, and dare I even say the 90s, the audience behavior was much more drawn out, right? The audience would they'd say, I'll see that in a couple of weeks. That's not what audiences do anymore for the most part. The behavior of audience movie going is that they go earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier. And so when you combine those two things, more and more competition every single week with brand new wide releases, that was never the case 30, 40, 50 years ago. Combine that with the fact that the movie-going audience behavior has now defaulted to a earlier and earlier and earlier going to see the film after its release. That means I have no doubt that E.T. record will never be broken. Titanic won't be touched. 14. You're never even going to see one that does 12 weeks at number 1. Never. I don't think you're ever going to see that again. Forget 16. I don't think 12. I'm not even sure 10 is ever going to happen, to be honest with you. I hope it does, but you know, we'll see. All right. Let's see here. Next up, we go over to who is next. Next one up is, and by the way, Jeffrey, again, dude, thank you so much for supporting us on that level, man. That's incredibly generous of you. Thank you so much for that. All right. Next up, we got Michael Kurtz, who writes, you should bring mailbag back. I find it hard to watch shows live and want to write in more. I mean, here's the problem with mailbag. All right. Our problem with mailbag, and I loved mailbag. I really, really did. But here's the problem with mailbag. We weren't being able to keep up. Now, you guys remember we used to do mailbag, right? Where you could email in a question instead of having to be watching live and submit a super chat. You could email in a question using a tip link. And then we would do these mailbag shows and answer those questions. The problem was, and this is going to sound weird, they were too successful. We started getting in so many questions. And for those of you guys who used to watch mailbag, you'll know this is true. That, ideally what I wanted to do is when somebody sends in a question, your question got answered on the very next mailbag. Well, what started to happen was that too many questions came in for us to answer in one mailbag. So some of those would have to wait to get answered till the next mailbag. But now you had all the new questions for that next mailbag, plus the leftovers from the previous one. And pretty soon, the number of questions having to get bumped was growing and growing and growing. And then it got to the point where some people were literally waiting like a week and a half to 2 weeks to getting their question answered. And we'd have like 4 or 5 mailbags and they were still waiting for a question they sent in like 2 weeks ago. And to me, that is unacceptable. That is unacceptable. If one of our viewers wants to support the channel and send in a tip and send in a question, I mean, I don't think we are obligated to get it answered right away, but I found it to be unacceptable that somebody that would do that would then have to wait weeks to get that question answered. And so as much as I hated not doing mailbag, because listen, it made our channel revenue, right? This is a business. We're trying to make money so I can pay employees and pay rent and pay myself and, all this kind of stuff. But it was not, the amount of money we were making doing mailbags was not worth making our audience who sent in questions having to wait a week, week and a half, 2 weeks to get those questions answered. I thought that created a viewer experience that was not pleasant, right? I think making somebody wait a couple of weeks to get their question answered to be an unpleasant viewer experience. And so I made, even though it was making us money, I made the very hard decision to not do mailbags anymore. Now listen, and I'd be curious, you know what? Let me put up a poll. Let me put up a poll right now. I'm going to ask you guys who are watching live. We got about 1,000 of you guys watching live right now. So let me ask you this. One of the suggestions that somebody put to me that said we should do is, I think if you wanted to send in a question for a mailbag, I think the minimum tip was like $5 or something like, I can't remember. I can't remember what it was. Somebody said to me, you should make the minimum $10. That way people can still send in their mailbag questions, but it will lower the amount of people who wants to send them in. And that way you can keep up with all the questions and you won't fall behind because fewer people will send in those questions because it costs a little bit more. And that's true. That logic was sound, but I also didn't want to create a situation where like, I kind of like everybody, listen, if you've got internet connection, you've got $2, $3, $4, $5. Right? So that's fine. But I didn't want to create a situation where only people who are financially well off, because like once you start getting into $10, $15, $20 a question, I don't know. I just don't know. Now, Latch and Morris is saying, well, just set a limit on the number of questions, but you can't do that because the link is open 24/7, right? The question link is always open. So what are we going to do? We're going to say we're only going to take 20 questions. And if you sent in your donation, your tip and your question after the first 20, too bad. You don't get your question answered. I don't feel good about that. I don't want to do that. So I don't know. I would love to bring mailbag back, but we would have to figure out a way that we could keep up with all the questions that came in so we can get them answered in a timely, reasonable time frame. And at the same time not feel like we are taking advantage of our viewers. And so if we can come up with something like that, I will bring it back. If we can come up with something like that, we will do it back. All right. Let's see here. Next up. Great question, Michael. And it is something that we think about. I just don't know how we're going to do it, but I'll continue to think about it. All right. Besparza Media writes, glad to see John Majors getting huge roles now. My first exposure to him was the beautiful film, The Last Black Man in San Francisco, before he became as big as he is today. Have you seen the film? If so, thoughts? Yeah, we talked about that one back in the day. Like we were still in my garage back when that film came out. Listen, this dude is unbelievable. Like he really got introduced to the world in Lovecraft Country. He really got introduced to the world in Lovecraft Country. And he was so good in that. It's still kind of, oh man, it still rubs me the wrong way that show isn't getting a second season. It so rubs me the wrong way that show isn't getting a second season. I loved that show and he was absolutely fantastic in it. And then he had his film Devotion. Now he's Kang. We've got Creed 3 looks incredible. I mean, this guy's just kind of dominating the world right now, and it couldn't have been happening to a more talented dude. I love seeing it. All right, thanks for sending that in, Besparza. All right. Tahir Rahim writes, I'm a bit confused as to where Yoda lands on the overall ranking of Force users. Top 5, top 2, help me out here, man. It all depends on who you talk to and what you consider canon and not canon. There was a lot of expanded universe stuff. I've seen some people put up lists where Yoda's not even in the top 10. That to me is utterly ridiculous. To me, it's, I personally rank it this way. It's Luke Skywalker, Anakin Skywalker, Palpatine, Yoda. That, and then after that, probably, I think Obi-Wan Kenobi eventually surpassed Mace Windu. Now, a lot of people say, how can you put Anakin above Yoda or Palpatine? Well, because Palpatine himself, in the prequel, when him and Yoda were battling, Palpatine himself said, Anakin is going to become more powerful than either you or I, right? Like Palpatine himself said, he is going to be more powerful than either of us when Palpatine and Yoda were fighting. And so, yeah, that's the way I would rank. But then again, then you get into all this expanded universe stuff. Well, this book is the ancient Sith of this. Yeah, you could do that. To me, I like to be just simple, more straightforward. So for me, the rankings is Luke, Anakin, Palpatine, Yoda, Obi-Wan. But that's just me. I'm sure there's I'm not willing to die on that hill. I'm sure a lot of people would have a lot to debate about that. All right. Next up, and then we're going to take another short break. This one comes from Michael Kurtz, who writes, if Marvel is worried about things getting out, why do they stop? Let me try this again. If Marvel is worried about things getting out, why do they stop caring 2 days before movies hit theaters on what is spoiled about the movie online? I'm not quite sure I know what you mean. I don't think Marvel, doesn't care if stuff gets out 2 days before movies hit on. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Every movie, every studio is worried about stuff getting out. So I'm not quite sure why you're saying, why do they stop caring 2 days before movies hit theaters on what is spoiled about the movie online? If you're talking about review embargo, well, you have to lift a review embargo before the movie comes out. And you just have to trust your media that you allowed to come and see the movie, not to give away, major spoilers. That's the idea. Now, and most outlets take care of that pretty well. But yeah, that's the industry, man. You can't expect people to buy a car, but not allow anybody to have reviews of that car out that consumers can read reviews and make some informed decisions about whether or not they want to invest their time and money in it. Now, obviously, the car is a bigger investment than a movie, but I have always contended going to a movie is an investment. It's an investment of time and money. Both are limited resources that we as human beings have. We only have limited time and we have limited money. And to me, that is a movie becomes a product that is no different from any other product. You have to allow reviews to be out there. And if you want to be an informed consumer, you got to make decisions about what do you want to invest your time and money into. And so you got to have reviews out. You just got to kind of hope that the review people won't reveal too awful much. Now, look, hot take. As I get older, I am more and more believing that spoilers really don't matter. And I know that's not popular to say that, but I look at something, I made a video about this a few weeks ago. I look at something like Last of Us, right? I know everything that happens in Last of Us, other than the new stuff that they do that's different from the game. But like, for example, Henry and Sam dying. I knew that was coming. You probably knew too. You who've played the game or what, you probably knew that as soon as those characters were introduced, you knew they were about to die, right? So did I. I knew they were going to die. Did that spoil it for me? Nope. My experience watching it was no less emotionally wrecking than if I had never known the story before. Because my wife got totally moved and destroyed emotionally by it, and so did I. She didn't know the story of the game. I did. Didn't change our experience. Now, look, I'm not saying I definitively believe spoilers don't matter, particularly in a case where, but my definition, and I'm just speaking for myself, my definition for what is a spoiler is being very, very different. So for instance, to me now, something is only really a spoiler if it's like the end of Sixth Sense, right? He was dead the whole time. Okay, that is the big culmination reveal. That your whole understanding of that movie fundamentally, completely changes if you know that he was dead the whole time, right? Like if you find out before seeing the movie, you are going to have a completely different viewing experience watching it. If you watch Usual Suspects and you know who Kaiser Soze is, that, like from the beginning, that fundamentally changes your entire viewing experience of the movie. You knowing that one fact changes your entire viewing experience of the movie. How many other things does that actually do? Like how many things actually do that? Next to none. Like finding out at the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier that Sam takes up the mantle of Captain America. Okay, maybe that's something that was planned to be revealed in the show, but would it change your viewing experience of the show entirely if you knew that going into the show? Nah. Again, that's just me. I have a lot of things about, I have a lot of long-held in myself, a lot of long-held thoughts and beliefs and philosophies about being a movie viewer that in the last 3 or 4 years, I've really been challenging myself about, I've believed this for this long, but is that really the case? And the issue of spoilers is starting to become one of them. Again, go back to the old thing, Titanic. We all know Titanic sinks. Did that change anybody's experience watching the movie? No, it didn't. And again, I don't want to sound like I have finished my thought process on this and I have landed on spoilers don't matter. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I've been challenging myself lately and really rethinking that whole issue. And again, there are still some movies that have moments like that have moments of the whole, he's been dead all along. And those things are major. And those things fundamentally change the way you view a movie in its entirety. But I don't know that many movies actually have that. Mostly today, there's these little inconsequential details that come out and people go, spoiler. And it's like, come on, that's not going to change your viewing experience of the movie. I know it won't for me, but I don't know. I'm not landed on that. I'm still going through my thought process on it, but that's just me. All right. Thanks for that, man. Next up, we've got Cutter Hale who writes, did you hear that the Jason Statham Guy Ritchie movie Operation Fortune is finally coming out in the US on March 3rd? I love Ritchie, so I'm seeing it. Listen, I love Guy Ritchie. I am also an unabashed Jason Statham fan. I love Jason Statham. And I really love Guy Ritchie. He's one of my favorite filmmakers. And so this is one that's kind of just been hovering in kind of movie purgatory for a long time. Like, is this movie coming out? Is it not coming out? Like, we've never really, and so it seems like we're finally getting some movement on it. I'm very much looking forward to seeing it. Again, I'm a Guy Ritchie and a Jason Statham guy, so here's hoping it's as good as I'm hoping it will be. All right, hey guys, listen, we're going to take one more 1 minute and 20-second break as I go and refill my drink again. Once again, stretch my legs for a minute, give you guys a chance to run, use the bathroom, whatever. And we're going to hear from another one of the sponsors of today's video, our major sponsor here on our John Campea YouTube channel, our friends over at Mint Mobile. We'll be back in just a minute. We want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Mint Mobile. If saving more and spending less is one of your top goals for 2023, why are you still paying insane amounts of money every month for your phone bill? Switching to Mint Mobile is the easiest way to save this year. As the first company to sell premium wireless service online only, Mint Mobile lets you order from home and save a ton with phone plans starting at just $15 a month. You guys know I made the switch over to Mint Mobile a while ago. The process couldn't have been easier, and I can't believe that I am spending less than a third of what I was spending on one of the other major carriers before. By going online only and eliminating the traditional costs of retail, Mint Mobile passes the significant savings on to you. All plans come with unlimited talk, text, and high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and switch easily in minutes with eSIM. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door free, go to mintmobile.com/Campea. That's mintmobile.com/Campea. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/Campea. And thank you to our friends at Mint Mobile and Ryan Reynolds for sponsoring this episode of Open Mike and John's Ask Me Anything. All right, guys, we're in the home stretch now. Let's get through the last bunch of questions that you guys have sent in here, shall we? We're going to pick things up here with Hayden Burke, who writes, I'm a hardcore sweaty and Phase 4 has been hard to get through. Booked Ant-Man tickets for date night, but after reviews, my partner and I turned to each other and said, no more. I mean, look, you guys have heard me talk about Phase 4, Hayden, and I get where you're coming from. Within Phase 4, there has been some absolute magnificence. Shang-Chi, I believe, is a top 5 MCU film. I know I like it more than a lot of people do, but I just think Shang-Chi is that special of a movie. And I get more and more impressed by it every time I watch it. WandaVision is probably the best thing that Disney Plus had ever put on. Andor gives it a run for its money, but I think WandaVision, Ms. Marvel, absolutely brilliant and fantastic. But here's the thing. We are accustomed to 5 out of every 6 Marvel things being fantastic. Now it's about 50-50. And for most studios, that's great. It's just not what we are accustomed to with Marvel. We've been a little bit, let's be honest, we've been a little bit spoiled with Marvel, right? We've been a little bit spoiled with Marvel and the MCU, just being banger after banger after banger after banger. I mean, it's just like, it just set your watch by. A new Marvel film's coming out, it's going to be awesome. It just has been. I'm sorry, I'm a big Marvel fan, but I'm a big Toronto Maple Leaf fan too. That's my life thing, but they have sucked most of my lifetime. I'm a big fan. I'm their number 1 fan. Their most important sports franchise in my life, but they have sucked most of my life, right? I'm a big MCU fan. You guys know this, but the reality is the bar has been lowered. It is, you can no longer, and I say that as somebody who I like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I do, but it wasn't great. Thor: Love and Thunder is very divisive, and I don't care whether this is a popular take or not. I still liked it. I came out of that movie with a smile on my face. I had laughed a lot. I had a good time. But even I knew coming out of it and having laughed, I remember my very first thing I said coming out of it. Remember, I got on social media, I did my first reaction to it, and I said, but here's the thing about this Thor: Love and Thunder, guys. It leans really heavy into the silly. And that turned a lot of people off. And I get it. So I liked Thor: Love and Thunder. I did. Even despite all of its flaws and its over silliness, I still liked it. But nowhere near as good as Thor Ragnarok was, right? Nowhere near that high standard of Marvel we've come to expect. I mean, I liked Loki, but I didn't think Loki was great. I liked Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It had great moments, but overall, I also thought it could have been better. Moon Knight was one that disappointed me. She-Hulk started off great. I loved the first episode of She-Hulk, man. I loved the first episode, but it was a comedy that just wasn't funny. And so, you know, and Eternals, I like Eternals more than most people do. Maybe I don't like it as much as Rob does. Rob loves that movie. And I really, really like Eternals. So I don't know what everybody else's problem is with it, but I think Eternals is great. But again, it's now like a 50-50 thing. I'm still excited about new MCU stuff, but that excitement isn't up here anymore. Now it's down to about here. So I get it. And now I'm going in to see Ant-Man tomorrow, and I'm a little apprehensive. I'm not going to lie to you. And I love Ant-Man. I love Ant-Man. I love Peyton Reed. I love Paul Rudd. I love Michael Douglas. You know, I love Ant-Man. And I'm a little nervous. I ain't going to lie to you. I'm a little bit nervous about it now. It seems weird to say, but right now, today, February 15th, 2023, it may be different a week from now, but right now, I think I'm a little bit more optimistic about the future of DC than I am about Marvel. Now that comment probably won't age well. We'll see what happens. Hopefully I'm going to love Ant-Man, and hopefully, you know, Guardians is going to be awesome. Hopefully, you know, all that kind of stuff. But here's the thing. Unless you've got your head in the sand, James Gunn is kind of killing everything. He's killing it. And you know, with things like Joker and the Batman, and now we finally have DC resetting, stuff like that. Again, I am not sitting here saying that DC is going to dominate Marvel. I'm not saying that. Be very, very clear. But it's hard right now not to feel a little bit more optimistic about the path DC has in front of them right now, as opposed to where Marvel is right now. Now, again, that can change very, very quickly. Like, I may love Ant-Man, then Guardians 3 comes out, which, by the way, was directed by James Gunn, but Guardians 3 comes out, and listen, once Guardians 3 comes out, all might feel right in the world again. The world might feel right again, right? Like, as I fully anticipate that Guardians 3 is going to kill it. I think it's going to be awesome. I can't wait. And then everything is back to the way it should be. But I'm just saying, I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that if I really was being honest with myself right this moment, and I asked myself the question, do I feel a little bit more optimistic about the future of DC right now, or a little bit more optimistic about the future of Marvel right now? I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic about the future of DC. And listen, Marvel has kicked DC's ass for the last 15 years. It hasn't even been close, guys. Let's just be honest. It hasn't been close. Marvel has literally put DC over its knee and spanked its ass. Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy? That's what it's been. Again, and I like all the DC movies, but let's be honest. Marvel has just been freaking laying it on DC. They have for the last 15 years. But that's the last 15 years. Where are we at today? And things have been changing. Things have been changing. Marvel's not firing on all cylinders like they have been. They're kind of 50-50 now. We got Ant-Man as of right now is the second worst reviewed movie in Marvel's history out of the 30 plus movies they've put out. They've put out some sputters. You know, Doctor Strange 2 was a little bit divisive. I liked it, but you know, it was a little bit divisive. Thor: Love and Thunder was very divisive. Now we got Ant-Man being the second lowest critically rated film that they've ever put out. Let's face it, Marvel's not firing on all cylinders right now. They're just not. Even though they put out some stuff that I truly, truly love in the last little bit, like Shang-Chi, WandaVision, Ms. Marvel, and a couple of other things. But it's a funny world. It's a funny world right now. We'll see how we feel after a bit here. Anyway, thanks for sending that in, Hayden. All right, next up, Maria del Carmen Martinez writes, what are your thoughts on I Am Legend 2 changing the original movie's ending? That is something we're going to talk about on the John Campea Show tomorrow. So it came out today that Avi Arad has signed a new deal with Warner Brothers. One of the things they're going to be doing is a Michael B. Jordan or an I Am Legend 2 sort of thing. Again, I haven't really sat down and read through the story because we've been busy all day preparing for that damn Jerry Bruckheimer interview, because you got maybe the most successful, at least one of the most successful producers of all time coming on. We spent most of our day getting ready for that interview. But I have to read more about it. Listen, I'm totally fine though if they do approach it with a change in the ending, but I got to read through it a little bit more. Again, we'll talk more about that. It's a great question to bring up, Maria, but we'll address it a little bit more on the John Campea Show tomorrow. Once I've had a chance, and Rob and everybody's had a chance to actually get into the story and read it a bit, because again, today has just been bonkers nonstop. That's why we started today's show about 25 minutes late. Great question, but we'll get to it tomorrow. Thanks for asking, Maria. All right, next up. We are at Mr. Graham 91 writes, please, boss, don't put that thing over my face. Don't put me in the dark. It's afraid of, you're talking about Michael Clark Duncan in The Green Mile. The Green Mile hits different when you watch it as an adult. R.I.P. Michael Clark Duncan. I'm telling you, man, I was so bummed out when we found out he passed away. I loved Michael Clark Duncan, man. I just thought he was fantastic. Like, not just I thought a truly world-class actor. Maybe never would have won an Academy Award, but I mean, I thought a world-class actor, but just his jovialness, his personality. When you saw him in interviews, you couldn't help but fall in love with that guy. He did this little movie. What was it called? Was it called The Whole Nine Yards? No, not The Whole 9 Yards. What was the name of the comedy he did with Bruce Willis and the guy from Friends? One of the actors from Friends. What was that called again? Not The Whole 9 Yards, or wait, maybe it was called The Whole 9 Yards. What was it? Come on, help me out in the live chat, guys. Am I right? It was The Whole 9 Yards. Yeah. Okay. It was called The Whole 9 Yards. I guess I had it right. Man, I love that first one. That's right. Chris McIntyre in the live chat with Amanda Peet. Yep. I loved Amanda Peet. She's one of the most beautiful actresses in the last 20 years in movies. Anyway, Michael Clark Duncan was so good in that. And I don't care what anybody says. To hell with all of you. He was a great Kingpin. He wasn't Vincent D'Onofrio. Don't get me wrong. Vincent D'Onofrio is the greatest Kingpin we've ever had. But he was a great Kingpin. I don't care what anybody says. Go F yourself. I mean, it's all subjective, of course, but I loved Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin. I totally bought into him as Kingpin. I really, really did. But in The Whole 9 Yards, he had this line. First of all, in Green Mile, hold my hand, boss. I mean, oh my God, him and Tom Hanks interact. Oh, so good. But in Whole 9 Yards, what is the line he has? It's something along the lines, there's nothing fine, and I can't do Michael Clark Duncan's voice. There's nothing finer than a fine naked woman holding a gun, or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but oh my God, that line, I loved it so much. I freaking miss Michael Clark Duncan, man. I really do. He was fantastic. All right. Let's see. Next up, FOY writes, how do Marvel get back to their very best? I think by doing what they're about to do. Cut back on the amount of projects they do, lessen the stress on Kevin Feige, get Kevin Feige back to giving more direct quality control over the films, and I think that will get them back on track. At least I hope it does. The Rice Rat writes, thoughts on the 2004 sci-fi classic Primer? We actually talked about Primer. Remember we did that big thing on Primer with me and Rob, and who was it? I can't remember who was with us. Anyway, I liked Primer a lot. It was this little film, didn't get a lot of attention. If you want to get Primer, there's a bunch of YouTube channels that do like movies in 15 minutes. They give you the quick recap in 15 minutes. Go look up the one on Primer. But really do yourself a favor and watch the whole movie. All right. Seconds from Disaster writes, hey, John, now that you've been in the new studio for a while, would you be willing to do a full tour and explain what everything is used for? I kind of did that already, didn't I? Are you talking about explain what everything is used for? I don't know if a lot of people would be interested. This wire connects this fan to keep Ray's feet nice and cool. I guess I could. If people would be interested in it, I could and walk you through all the different stuff. But I kind of felt like we did that. But we could do it again. Yeah, we can do it again at some point. Especially now since we changed over Studio B from the way it used to be. Yeah, maybe we could do that. All right. Thanks for writing that in Seconds from Disaster. Next up, Brandon writes, Any update on the Universal YouTube situation? Yes, we won. For those of you who don't know, really stupid situation. I don't know what the hell Universal was thinking. I got hit with a copyright notice that Universal Studios filed against my like 12 or 13-year-old movie review. Maybe it was 15 years old. I can't remember, of the James Gunn film Slither. It was like a 12 or 13, 14, 15-year-old movie trailer or movie review I did. And all I did was a totally legal thing to do. I used clips from the trailer in helping me review and explain the movie, right? That is perfect textbook example of fair use. And as a matter of fact, in YouTube's own guidelines about fair use, they actually say in YouTube's actual guidelines, an example of proper fair use is using a clip from a movie while reviewing that movie. It's right in their guidelines. And that's what I did. Now, this happens sometimes, and what happens 99% of the time when I get a copyright claim, I just refute it, right? I refute the copyright claim. I say on the grounds of it's a movie review, this is fair use. And then 99% of the time, the studio or company that filed the copyright claim goes, "Oh yeah, you're right," and they drop it. But Universal actually rejected my claim. And I'm like, and that's never happened to me. Because I wrote and I refused. I said, no, this is proper use because I'm using a clip from the trailer to help me review the movie. This is perfectly under the doctrine of fair use and blah. And so I expected Universal to go, oh yeah, we release our copyright claim. That's what happens 99% of the time. But Universal was like, nah, F that. We reject your claim. So then I was faced with the choice. Do I just let them have my video because it's an older video? I'm not getting any views on it anyway. Or do I in principle say, no, F you can't just abuse the system like that, and actually do what's called filing an appeal. Now, the danger with filing an appeal is that if you lose, you get a copyright strike. And if you get a copyright strike, you can't monetize your videos, you can't live stream, and all of our videos are live stream. So it would essentially shut my channel down. And so I talked with my wife about it, and I decided, no, F this. You know what? I've already fucking won the game of life. If my channel gets shut down tomorrow, I mean, that sucks, but whatever. But I cannot let this stand. I cannot let this studio just get away with this. This is in principle wrong. So I decided to file the appeal. Now, once you file an appeal, the people you are filing the appeal against have 7 days to respond. And if they don't respond, YouTube throws out their copyright claim. And Universal just never responded. Instead of like coming back and saying, oh yeah, we were wrong, sorry about that, they just decided not to respond at all. So look, at the end of the day, we won. The thing got thrown out. My little review of Slither is still up now and being monetized, even though nobody watches it anymore. But yes, the ultimate outcome of that, was that we won. It got thrown out because I chose to submit the appeal. I put in my written argument, and they just never responded. And so after 7 days, it got thrown out. So thank you for asking about that, Brandon. I appreciate that. Okay, next up, we got Just a Sub 32 who writes, what's in that teacup of yours? What teacup? Are you talking about this? Right now I have Zevia in this cup. If you're wondering, unless you're talking about another cup, I don't know what other cup we're talking about, unfortunately. All right. And, and then finally, Jared Clark just sends in a super chat just to be supportive. All right. Thank you for that, man. I appreciate that very much. And guys, that'll do it for this installment of Open Mic's Ask John Anything broadcast here today. Thank you so much for being here and joining me here today, guys. Big special thank you to all of you guys who sent in those super chats. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported this channel as you did it, and all of us involved with the John Campea YouTube channel. Thank you guys so very much for your support. Hey guys, don't forget, come on back and join us tomorrow for the next installment of the John Campea Show. We already got some pretty big stories. You guys already know what they are. We're working on some pretty big stories for tomorrow. We're going to have a good time tomorrow. Me, Rob, Ray, Taylor, Jonathan, we're all going to be here. Make sure you guys come back and join us for that. And then, of course, we're all going to go see Ant-Man tomorrow. Tomorrow's game day for Ant-Man. Still looking forward to it, even though the reviews haven't been great. Thanks for being here, guys. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.